The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. AFC Championship, NFC Championship, DraftKings picks in preview. Probably not going to be too long of a show because there's only 2 games that you can go do. My advice, just leave some money on the table and then take whoever that you want, because you're going to end up with many of the same plays as everyone else. Maybe you have that one sleeper that you have to have in, or you have the right combination to go in. Always recommend you go to ftndaily.com, use code Mayo, get yourself a discount on all of the advice and the projections, ownership projections, cornerback matchups, and optimizer. That's up there right now. Obviously, it's very heavily discounted with only 2 weeks to go, but there's showdown contests. And if you're looking for showdown-specific contests, go to Mayo Media Network right now on YouTube. Subscribe to the page. Justin Freeman and David Jones will be breaking down one of the games each if you just want to get in on the solo action for what's going on the showdown contest. They've both won, I think, over $500K each this year on NFL Showdown. So, I mean, they're the guys to listen to, not so much me. The other guy you might want to listen to, Jake Ciely from theathletic.com, who I always recommend to hit the like button. And in the comment section, Jake, who's the sleeper of the week?
You don't want to listen to me, Chalk Donkey. Austin Eclair. Let's go with the Eclair.
Because he sounds delicious?
Yes, exactly. That's the first thing that came to mind. I knew you would have something for him.
I just off the top of my head. I'm here. I'm having fun. It's a fun week. We had a bunch of golf. We had the Spread Pick Show. That's already out up on the Pat Mayo Experience feed, both audio and video. Plus, I mean, I want to tell everyone right now, you got to go and check out the UFC 257 DraftKings picks and preview. That is already out. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, it was the part before this part on the show. So that's one way to look at it. Also, it's you can go to the Dogger Pass podcast, fight by fight betting preview for the big card this week. Obviously, Conor McGregor is fighting, so you can go check out their audio podcast feed or check out the video up on Mayo Media Network right now. Let's jump into this. What team you building around? What game you building around?
Well, so first of all, it's Anthony Eclair. It's not even Austin Eclair. But I think I'm going to be on what a lot of people are on. And hey, Chalk Donkey, right? I think Bills Chiefs are the way to go if Mahomes is playing. Not only the fact that you get Bills Chiefs as the second game, so that opens up some flexibility for you because you can see what you hit in the beginning of the game if you have a sleeper in the first game. But that just looks to be the higher scoring game. It's got the higher over under, but even besides that, you go back to the first one. Aaron Rodgers was his worst game of the season, the only game with no touchdowns, the only game with multiple interceptions. That's not the same Aaron Rodgers anymore. That was back in week 6, I think it was. And while I think that they win, I just don't see. So interesting, I found when I was looking at this line, Pat, is that the Packers have hit over for this game. It's 51.5 right now, or 51, depending on where you're looking. They've hit the over in that in 8 games, and all 8 of those games, their opponent scored 25. The interesting thing is that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, every single game they won, they scored at least 25. All their losses were less than 25 points. So it's interesting if you're going to lose this game. Well, then if you go by history of this season, they don't score 25. You see what I'm saying? So I actually think the better scoring game is going to be Buffalo Chiefs, and I think a lot of people are. I don't think that's a shock to anybody.
No, I'd say it's probably a 3-1 type build that will go with Chiefs and Bills against the Buccaneers and Packers. And on a small slate like this, that would almost lean you more towards Packers and Tampa Bay. And for me, the move is probably build around Tampa Bay when it comes down to it, because if they're going to win, obviously, if they're going to, like you said, if they're going to lose the game, they don't score very many points, but if they're going to win the game, then they probably will score a bunch of points. You would at least have to think that way. And it's not like the over-under in game totals for each of their games are significantly off, because I do think you really want to go hammer on one team, stack the comeback in that game, and take your sleepers from the other game and hope to hit either. I mean, you can play Diggs by himself if you play the other end of the game and maybe pick a Chief to play, or maybe you play a John Brown from the Bills game, and that's like your only Bills exposure, with the whole point being, hey, maybe everything funnels through John Brown. He catches 2 touchdowns and offset everything, and your stack ends up going off. And the only reason I say the Bucs is because I assume because of the confusion that they have at receiver, they'll be the lowest owned of these 4 teams.
And you have the Jair Alexander too. And the fact that Mike Evans, despite catching a touchdown last week, didn't really do much because it was the one catch for 3 yards. So if Alexander does the same thing Lattimore does and what he's been doing this entire season and decides to shadow and stay on top of Mike Evans and limits him, now you're down to Chris Godwin and a gimpy Antonio Brown who missed practice as of now. As you always say, we're recording this on Thursday, so we don't have the Thursday practices yet. But that's where I agree with you, is I think a lot of people are concerned about Tom Brady with these options, with not 100%, with a bad matchup at corner. And not that Mike Evans can't get away from Alexander, but you just fold all those things in. And where I would agree with you in a tournament lineup, that seems to be where you're going to get the most differentiation, is if you stack a Tom Brady and even go back to Gronkowski, because Gronkowski, he keeps going to him, that being Tom Brady, keeps going to him, missed a touchdown twice, essentially. He just kind of keeps just being off by about this much. And Cameron Brate's been out there a lot, but your point about it stands. Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, you kind of bring all those through, and you're definitely going to have a different lineup than most people to start.
Do you think that Antonio Brown ends up going in this game?
It's Thursday. It's going to depend. If he's completely out again on Thursday, then I'd say it's hard for him to go. If he gets a limited session in, but I think the interesting thing for me is that it's going to be like you and I talked about last week, where we said we like Mecole Hardman more if Sammy Watkins does play, because he's not going to be 100%, because that'll get the ownership off of him. It's kind of the same situation here. I kind of want Antonio Brown to be active so I can go to Scotty Miller and take that chance. And I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off because that one time in the beginning, what was it, middle of the season before Antonio Brown was there, it was like week 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there. Everybody was on Scotty Miller and he did nothing because he was the decoy. So I want that to kind of happen for that reason. If Antonio Brown plays, I'm going to see some Scotty Miller. Even Johnson could be a decent flyer. It could be Johnson as a big play and not Scotty Miller. But either way, you get both of them. I think you're going to get people on them if Antonio Brown is out. So you kind of bring in some ownership that you don't want. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. So like Tyler Johnson played 21% of the snaps last week. Scotty Miller played 11% of the snaps. It does feel like Tyler Johnson might end up being a bigger play threat that you're going to have to take a complete jabroni or two in your lineup. Like that's just the case this week, unless you play.
I do have one I really like.
Well, that's good. Who is it? Tell me. I need to play this guy.
Well, I wasn't sure how you were doing the show this time, because
there's two games. We're just throwing shit against the wall here.
So it's in the same game. My flyer is
Tanner
in the
Hudson.
Early game, which I really no. It's just I
Equina-
really like on the other side of the ball.
Equinemius St. Brown.
No, but it's also somebody with a long name. So there you go. It's Marquez Valdez-Scantling, because Tampa Bay this year, if you're on paper, if you're looking at them, been more susceptible to the slot wide receivers. Russell Gage beat him up twice. If you look at it, Marquez Valdez-Scantling spends time in the slot. And then, as we know, because he doesn't run like a pure slot like a Scotty Miller. He doesn't run those kind of routes. He's that similar to Michael Thomas, where he's running a lot of those seam and go routes out of the slot. And as you've mentioned time and time again, all it takes is Valdez-Scantling catching 2 passes, because he's got that Marquise Brown big play upside, but he also works out of the slot, which is great for the matchup. So I think Marquez Valdez-Scantling at 3,900, that's one I'm going to have a lot on my teams.
Okay. If we weren't concerned about a popular build, we just wanted to play the best plays, what do you think the best plays of the week are? Like, if you were going to take one quarterback and pair him up with someone, who is it? Is it Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs? Because I think that's where I would lean.
That's where I would lean. And the interesting thing you say here is, if you're just going for the best play, and this is what I would do if you're going to play cash. I know we're not really talking about that, but if you are, I've built a couple cash lineups with Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, because you can do it. Or take one of those wide receivers out, put in Travis Kelce, and you go cheap at running back. Like, that's really what you can do here, because look at the running back situation right now. Like, Aaron Jones, 6,500. Aaron Jones is sharing too much with Jamal. Actually, you're like Jamal Williams for the discount at 4,400, because what's the difference between Jones and Williams really on their ceiling? Jamal Williams can score 2 touchdowns any given game. And then you get down to the Tampa Bay mess, and Edwards-Helaire, if he's healthy, it sounds like he's going to play, but now you've got that mess of a backfield with 3-4 options potentially involved. Devin Singletary doesn't touch the ball. So if it's me, I'm going to go cheap at running back. Like, again, you said the best plays, and I'm going to either go Josh Allen with Diggs, which I agree is the best combination, or even Rodgers with Adams, and then add in a Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Diggs. Like, I think there's a combination you can work there.
What is your expectation from Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week? Do we think that he goes? And if he does go, like, how big is his role going to be? Because the move might be just go back to Darrell Williams again.
That might be the interesting move. I think that one will kind of depend on the ownership. If the Edwards-Helaire ownership is the lowest, I might go in on him because before he got hurt, he was the lead. And I do think he's going to play because he was out there in limited fashion, but he was out there on Wednesday, which makes it sound like he's way ahead of the schedule he was last week and probably out there. If he plays, I think they're going to give him the majority to work, but majority as in 13, 15 touches max, and Darrell Williams gets still his 8 to 12. And then we know Le'Veon Bell's kind of a wasted space at this point. And, so I think it'll come down to where do people go at that point? Because they're only $200 difference. So Edwards-Helaire versus Williams, just give me whoever's lower owned, because I don't think we're going to know. I don't think we know who's the usage is going to be definitively.
I would almost assume that if Edwards-Helaire is active, then he is going to be the one with the ownership, and people will push Williams back to the back burner.
Then give me Williams.
Oh. What about Byron Pringle, who played almost half the snaps last week for the Chiefs?
Sammy Watkins is supposed to be back.
He for sure?
He's supposed to be. That just kills that right there. Sammy Watkins, what was yesterday's report? Because it was the same with Edwards-Helaire too. I'm pulling it up while we're talking here. Sammy Watkins. It'll be the first. And he's playoff Sammy Watkins at 3,800. His price drop. Yeah, already practiced on Wednesday. Both he and Edwards-Helaire were both out there practicing on Wednesday, so that makes it sound like they're ready to go.
What do we make of Beasley? Only played 63% of the snaps last week. Obviously, he took a big shit in everyone's lineup. Is he someone that you can see getting going again this week? Because I doubt people are very unforgiving when it comes to their lineups. I know there are very limited options, but where we really liked, as we spoke about, we liked John Brown a lot last week because that big play potential. Now you're going to see a situation where everyone loves John Brown this week. Everyone's going to use John Brown this week. And like the heat is off Cole Beasley a little bit. Not that he'll be unowned. There's only so many guys that you can play on this slate who are actually impact players. But I feel like he is in a nice leverage spot for that Bills offense.
Yeah, I'll go back to Beasley. I was on Beasley for the exact reason of why Diggs did so much against them last week, is the opportunity was over the middle of the field and out of the slot. And Beasley still has another decent chance this week, because if you look at this, the one downside to it is you like Diggs, you like Brown, and everybody's going to be on Brown for the reason of what we were talking about the Chiefs last week, is that just like their opponent last week in the fact that they give up a ton of go routes, so do the Chiefs. So Brown should essentially hit, but maybe that's where you say, okay, Diggs takes that away from Brown. Maybe one of them goes to Gabriel Davis. But you kind of bring back Cole Beasley because we talk about the recency bias all the time, and people hate. It's an off-season piece I do for seasonal is last year's trash. People hate to go back to people that burn them. So the savings, and I have a line I'm looking at. This is why I'm looking down right now, is because I'm looking at a lineup right now where I have Allen, Diggs, and Beasley, and I brought it back with Kelsey and Hill on the other side. And yeah, that's going to be a very common thing to stack this game and to bring it back. But to be able to do Allen, Diggs, Beasley, Kelsey, Hill all in the same lineup, maybe there's a lot of overlap, but that's just a very appealing way to go. You can't do it. What I'm saying is you can't do it with John Brown. He kind of pushes too much out.
Do you have any lean between Fournette and Ronald Jones?
I don't, but that's why I'm going to go to Ronald Jones, because I think everybody's going to be on Fournette. Playoff Lenny is what they're calling him now. And the fact that he's been doing great, but Ronald Jones wasn't 100%, played a decent amount last week. I keep bringing it up. I know I've said this a million times to you, is I'm just hoping for the Leonard Fournette game where, it's 40, 50 yards, but he scores twice. And against Green Bay, who's had a much better run defense in the second half of the season, I will go with that gamble just because Fournette for the price isn't terrible. But I feel like if you ask me today, I think he's going to be by far the highest owned running back.
Well, it's really, you kind of mentioned it, that if you just pay down at running back, not that the running backs this week are all that expensive. Like Aaron Jones is very clearly the number one running back on this slate. No one's going to deny that. That's why he's the most expensive by $1,200. But if you get into a circumstance where you can fade a big game from Aaron Jones, then I think a lot of the possibilities are open for some of these mega lineups like you talked about. Like play Jamal Williams instead. I'll probably end up fading Jones, Fournette, and Singletary, taking Jamal Williams, and then picking my poison between Ronald Jones and Darrell Williams. That's probably how I'm going to end up playing my running backs this week, and then just going superstars at receiver and quarterback and tight end.
The interesting thing with that too is I actually have a lineup very similar to that I'm looking at right now. And if you leave some money on the table, you can actually Williams versus Ronald Jones, their price is only $200 apart. Now, granted, you would have to make a decision in the early game, but I'm saying if you would get to Saturday with some projected ownership and you just want to take the one that's more likely to be on fewer rosters, then you want to do it. Probably going to be Jamal Williams in the early game, because you're going to get the Buccaneers run defense. You're going to get the split backfield. There's some people still talking up AJ Dillon, but I like the fact that he's missing practice for Jamal Williams' sake. I think that he's the interesting play. And then, out of the early game, whether or not that hit.
I'm just looking at the defenses right now. If we're going to save money, where do you like going at defense? I think that the Bucks are going to be the most popular D just because they are the cheapest defense. And you can envision a path to where they end up having a really nice fantasy game. Like, none of these defenses are great. You don't feel good about playing against any of these offenses, so you almost have to pick your poison. I was almost thinking that the Packers might be the play because they are unreasonably priced at $3,600. That makes no sense because they are probably the worst of these four defenses just overall. They score the fewest fantasy points per game on DraftKings. Like, they're at 5.8 per game for the season. After that, it's the Chiefs at 6.7. So they're almost a full point behind on average per game. All of the other defenses on this slate, people are going to look at me like, not a great defense, but at the same time, this is all on a small slate like this. Again, you have to think, what are the percentage chances that any of these four defenses score them more than 10 points? Probably not all that high, is it?
No, it's not. And honestly, if something goes crazy sideways with Mahomes and he's not playing, the Bills will be fought. Everybody will be on the Bills.
We're expecting Mahomes to play, though.
Right. So with that, I'm with you on the Packers. I'm going to go with the two higher priced ones. And by the way, I will victory lap this on your show. Remember everybody that wanted to play the Rams? And I told you, I'm not saying against you versus me, but there were so many people that wanted to play the Rams. How'd that work out for you in DFS? I don't take cheap people. I was warning you, don't take them, because that's why I'm off the Bucks. Again, you mentioned, yes, maybe the Bucks can score 6 or 7, but Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw interceptions and he's at home. So with you, I would go for the Packers if you can afford them, because I don't expect them to be, because what you said, the price is going to push a lot of people off them. But Tom Brady is somebody who can go haywire versus Aaron Rodgers. He does have multiple games with multiple interceptions, and he'll take some sacks sometimes. So I think that's the play. And then the Chiefs play is obviously what we've talked about a lot. It really hasn't happened this year, but if Josh Allen crazy for a game and starts taking some sacks and throwing some turnovers, and maybe even gets taken down from behind and the ball gets stripped from him, causes a fumble that could potentially get returned for a touchdown, I think that might be the play there. I think that's the one. With Mahomes playing, I know some people will argue you could say the same for the Buffalo's defense. They just had a touchdown, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the Bills or the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to go with the Packers. The Bucs are going to be by far the highest owned defense. I really do think that, just because their price makes everything work. And like I said, if none of these defenses are projected to have a big game, then what's the harm in really going with the cheapest one? Your lineup's not really going to be all that critically damaged if the Bucs score 2 points and the Packers score 6 points. The savings that you get is probably more valuable than that gap. But that's why I kind of like the Packers, because all this is about trying to fluke your way into a touchdown somehow. And if the Packers are going to be by far the lowest owned of these defenses, which I do project them to be, then, if all things being equal, that you have a circumstance where, the defenses have an equal shot of scoring a touchdown, just give me the lowest owned one, because if it actually happens, then it's far more impactful in my lineup than it is in anyone else's.
Exactly. And that's really what we're going for here. Is you mentioned it time and again. And I think I'll draw the comparison from Mark Andrews from 2 or 3 weeks ago. If the defense, if that player, if that pick, if the gap ends up only being, as you said, if that gap only ends up being 5, 6, 7 points, then you know what? The Buccaneers, even if they score a 0 and the top defense scores 7, it still was the better play because of what you can do flexibility wise. But if you have any defense that could potentially get into the teens, 15, and you really kind of break the slate at that position, that's why. So yeah, I'm with you on the Packers. I still think the Chiefs could potentially do it just because we've seen it before. And if you need the 500, that's a $500 difference. I think the Chiefs defense has similar upside to the Packers. So If I need the savings, I'll go to the Chiefs, but I'm with you. The one that I'm going to try and plug in the most is the Packers.
I just thinking about it right now. The Chiefs will probably be higher owned than the Bills, I would think, especially if Mahomes is good to go. How would this end up? Where I'm trying to parse through how this end up working. Tampa, KC, Buffalo, Green Bay, as I project the ownership order of those four. So I'm curious to see how that ends up going. And by projections,
I can see Green Bay over Buffalo because of Mahomes.
No, just the price difference is just too extreme.
You think it's too big?
Yeah. If people want to save money at defense, they should try to save money at defense. But on on a 2-game slate, it works a little bit differently than it normally would. The last thing I want to do is go through each of the teams and try to find, like you said, the one guy who you have to basically take the shot in the dark on. You have to gamble that this guy's going to be good. He's going to catch a touchdown, and that's what separates your team because, we can tell you, play Josh Allen with Stefon Diggs. Yeah, no shit. Who is the guy from the Bills that you should actually be playing who could luck his way into the touchdown? So is it Gabriel Davis? Is it Dawson Knox? Is it Lee Smith? Is it Isaiah McKenzie? Like, which one of those guys would be on your radar?
Gabriel Davis is banged up too. You know what?
So would that make it Isaiah McKenzie?
If Gabriel Davis is out, I think that would make it Isaiah McKenzie. If Gabriel Davis plays... Yeah, he's still 4,100. I think Beasley comes into this conversation. Does he not count at 4,100?
No, because people are going to play Cole Beasley. They just will. He's Cole Beasley. He's good.
Yeah, but the problem is I don't like the bill. If you have Beasley, Brown, and Stefon Diggs, I'm not going to go Gabriel Davis or Isaiah McKenzie. So if you tell me no Gabriel Davis, then yes, but I'm not gonna go chase. I know that's what we're trying to do, but I'm not gonna chase the fourth option when it's a split fourth option opportunity. If you told me it was one person as the fourth option, then yes, but I'm not gonna do a split.
But the whole point of this is like you're going to need that differentiator in order to win. So,
but this doesn't always happen on every team.
No, I
just don't think it comes from Buffalo.
So you don't think it comes from Buffalo? So again, Dawson Knox is just out on this?
It's not that he's not on it, but even when he scores a touchdown, he doesn't even hit double-digit points. That's my problem with Dawson Knox. I mean, you've been right on him before with scoring a touchdown, but what's his season high? 8?
Yeah,
he's got 11.
Probably 9 points, something like that. But on this slate for that price, that's how you unlock and play all of the big guys. And your shitty guy needs to be less shitty than the other shitty guys.
No, I agree with you. No, I'm not saying that's not the strategy. I'm just saying I was just talking purely Dawson Knox. He scored double digit twice. If I was going with somebody from Buffalo because it's tight end, I would go Dawson Knox.
Okay, Chiefs side of the ball. If Sammy Watkins isn't back, it would be Pringle for me. If Sammy Watkins is back, it's probably Sammy Watkins, isn't it?
I think so. And actually, it's not Pringle for me. If it's Sammy Watkins is back, it's DeMarcus Robinson for me because everybody's going to be on Mecole Hardman. And
people will be on both of them. No one will use Pringle. The ownership discount that you would get on Pringle versus those other two, and Hardman would objectively be the better play. Like the lowest ceiling outcome is definitely Pringle, but Pringle's also going to be the one in this game that's 3% owned instead of a floor of 12%.
Well, see, what was DeMarcus Robinson's last week. That's what I feel. I feel like people just don't want to use DeMarcus Robinson.
No, but we're also condensing the slate too, where we've cut out 4 teams.
Yeah, I know, but still, all right, fine. Yeah, if you're going to tell me that DeMarcus Robinson does get up near Mecole Hardman ownership, then sure, I would go with Byron Pringle. Pringle is this one feels kind of obvious for this entire game. Unless it's Anthony Sherman who runs for a touchdown.
Yeah, let's hope that doesn't end up happening. From the Packers, I said St. Brown. I think that's where I would stick with them because I don't think that my main man, Mercedes Lewis, is going to get it done.
No. That would be... And I hate St. Brown too, but that's the only one down in this range because Valdez-Scantling is going to have ownership. Oh yeah, for sure. Because he's a name, he's a big play threat, and he's cheap. That's a perfect combination for being thrown in the back end of lineups. St. Brown, it's not like he wasn't out there last week. Like he almost scored a touchdown too. Why.
Like
yeah, he's just not that good. That's my problem.
In fairness, neither is Valdez. Neither is Valdez-Scantling.
Sure, but yeah, that's the right call in this game. St. Brown's the right call in this game.
And then for the Bucks. Feel like it could be almost anyone, but I feel like it could be anyone.
No, but the play here is if Antonio Brown plays, and then Tyron Johnson and Scotty Miller.
But not like
That's
what about someone like Brait in this game?
That's you know what that kind of you bring up the argument for Brait is your argument that you were making for like DeMarcus Robinson. I think that people are already on him because of the last two games. The last two games he's been out there as much and running routes a little bit more. I think he was either last week or 2 weeks ago. The one of those two games he was running more routes than Gronkowski. So I feel like people are already on Brait. That's why.
Would you play Gronk or Brait?
I'd play Gronk because I think people are on Brait because Brait's outplayed him in fantasy purposes the last two games because Gronk keeps getting missed. Like Tom Brady's not connecting with us. Can we stop trying to get Gronk hurt, by the way? Stop making him lay out. Every time he goes for one of those diving catches, I'm worried Gronk's going to come up lame. But that's why I think people are going to go to this. Feels like earlier this season when this happened, when we were doing this whole Brait thing. It's like, oh my God, he's doing it. This is before Gronk really started playing well in like week 6 or 7. Is people were kind of on Brait, and then all of a sudden it didn't happen. That's when Gronk finally woke up. I feel like people are going to be on Brait, and if so, then I'm going to be on Gronk at 3,200. Actually, we didn't really talk about it. Do you think
Gronk is going to definitely be way higher owned than Brait, by the way?
You think so?
Yeah, it's not even going to be close.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
You have this perception that people are playing DraftKings like they're coming at it with like, how do I say it? You're very insular when it comes to thinking about sort of this stuff. You're not taking the actual public perception into account when people go fill out lineups like, oh, I know Gronk, I'll play Gronk. Like sometimes it's that easy.
Okay. I'm playing too many. It's just what I'm playing too many of like not R, but like the single 3 max entry, the people with the higher. Now that's okay. That's fair.
Like I would expect
that wasn't like supposed to be a shot at anybody.
And this is just throwing out. I would guess that Gronk's ownership is like 13% and Brait's is like 8, something like that.
Okay,
and
right, certainly fair. Well, I was going to sidebar question for you.
That could even skew a bit. It's just like Kelsey is going to be by far the highest owned one. Then it'll be Tunyon.
That was what I was going to say. Do you think Tunyon's the highest tight end? That's not Kelsey.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But that's going to put him closer to Gronk than it will to Kelsey. Kelsey will be owned in like 90% of contests, as he should be.
Yeah, if you can find it. Are you fading Kelsey at all?
No. I would fade Hill before I faded Kelsey in that game.
So I agree with you. Actually, that's what to go back to what I was talking about when I pulled out the wide receiver. Well, okay, so I have one lineup when I have the Kelsey and Hill because that's the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley one. But when I've done the Diggs, Adams, Hill, when I pulled one of them out to put Kelsey in it was Diggs, Adams, and Kelsey, not Diggs, Hill, and Kelsey.
Okay. Yeah. Just ways that you can get around some of the like duplicated lineups this week. 2 tight ends, one in your flex, one in your tight end spot is one way to get around it. Leave at least like $300 to $500. You can leave more than that, but leaving at least that much on the table is how you can differentiate your lineups.
Yeah, I have one lineup with $300 on the table. You could even possibly go a little bit higher than that. So to differentiate, what do you think about? Do you think there's going to be a chance that you immediately get different by going Mahomes?
No,
because I think a lot of people.
I don't.
You don't think a lot of people are going to do what the lineup I was talking about is stack that game, but stack it with Josh Allen because of the savings.
I think you're probably looking at a circumstance where Allen and Mahomes are 1 and 2 in ownership. Allen's probably
really?
higher.
I would say Rodgers.
I would say that Allen's probably, maybe it's completely flat. I don't know, but it just, how do people actually want to stack these games? And like we said, people want to stack the Bills and Chiefs game. They know Mahomes is a bit banged up and he's more expensive, so Josh Allen will be the higher owned. But it's not like people are going to look at this and be like, don't want to play Patrick Mahomes. No, they want to play Patrick Mahomes.
I was thinking because of the money. Like I was thinking Rodgers and Allen because of the prices, and the price on Rodgers still $6,500. I just felt like they were going to be 1 and 2.
Now I would guess that Rodgers is going to be the lowest owned.
Really? I thought it was going to be Brady.
No, because Brady's cheap. So you have
He's only $400.
I had $400 could be a lot on this slate. And that's just the way that people go about it. Like if there's 2, and people have a lot of respect for the Bucs defense. Like people will look at this and be like, oh, the Bucs have the best defense left, so I'll not take the quarterback against them. I'll take the cheaper quarterback against the worst defense.
Yeah, but it's similar to the run defense for the Packers. Is the Bucs defense wasn't that great. In the
But
second
it
half
doesn't
of the
matter if
season.
they're
Flip,
actually good,
flip.
or it doesn't matter if they're actually good or actually bad. It's what people think.
Oh no, no,
and
I'm
that's
just
how they pick their teams.
right. I'm just telling people for opponent wise, like don't be afraid of Aaron Rodgers.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
I would not be. Like I said,
Saw how that worked last week.
that game in particular is going to be the lower owned part of this week. So if you can find the options in that game or just completely stack Bucks or Packers, that's probably the best way to leverage yourself against the field. Although I want to play Josh Allen team because I think that Josh Allen's the best player. Josh Allen, Diggs, like I feel like you're going to need them to win.
I thought wait, so you think you're going to need them to win a tournament? Like that's your play, is what you're saying. You're not saying that as in like a differentiation.
No, I think that if you're going to play, even last week, like I did really well in the $100 SPY with a Patrick Mahomes Chief stack because as we talked about, we faded Singletary. Didn't need Singletary at all. Play Cam Akers. That worked out pretty well. I didn't have Fournette, but that wasn't that big of a deal. I ended up winning like 4x my money in that one, even with Mahomes. Like last week, it was so flat across the board in terms of fantasy points scored at quarterback that you really could have rolled anyone out there as long as the rest of your plays hit. This week, one of these guys is going to jump out. If you can, it's just like the defense. If you can pick the right defense and pick the right quarterback, the plays in between of that sandwich are pretty obvious, I think.
Sandwiches. If you're going with the Tampa Bay stack that you're talking about to be different from before, are you going to go Brady, Godwin, Mike Evans just because the savings is so easy?
No, I would probably go Brady, Godwin, Gronk.
Then you wouldn't bring a fourth in?
I might. I mean, I'd have to ask my wife about that, but it's a bit extreme. But it would be one of like the absolute jabronis I would bring in. Like maybe I play Gronk and Brate. Maybe I play Johnson. Maybe I play Scotty Miller. Or those are my three.
So
those are my three. I hope everything funnels through them, and then bring it back with Adams, Williams, and just completely go hog on that game.
So, and thank you for that, by the way. So you brought my last question for you was going to be the 2 tight end lineup, because that one in one of the tournaments I was in last week, it was the winning lineup was the Tanyan in the flex. This idiot again. For everybody, stop doing that. Stop burning your flex in the first game. Stop. But anyway, he had the Kelsey Tanyan, which you could have put Kelsey in the flex and done it. That's a lineup build situation. But anyway, the 2 tight end ended up being the tournament that I was in. He was the number one. Was the tournament was the Kelsey Tanyan. So are you thinking that route for this week was going to be my final question?
Yeah, I mean, you can get away with it, and I think that fewer people will do it. It allows you to play more popular plays, but in a way that a lot of people aren't doing, and sometimes that's the best way to manufacture a lineup.
Yeah.
And if you play Kelsey in the flex, so you want to play Tunyon first in the tight end spot and put Kelsey in your flex, that gives you 2 options too. It lets you know where you stand going into the later set of games that, hey, do I have a lead? Or I can look at who's at the top of the standings and player minutes remaining. I can almost assure you that Kelsey's going to be owned by every single team, that if you're behind all of the other Kelsey teams, then you can't play Kelsey. You have to go somewhere else.
Would you actually? I lied to you. One more question for you. Would you ever double down on the backfield? Because I've gotten some of those questions. Would you do a Edwards-Helaire Williams? Would you do a Jones Williams? Would you double down on some of them or Fournette Jones? Like you get the people out there, but you get the entire backfield.
Fournette Jones would probably be the only one I would consider, because I can realistically see them splitting carries, splitting goal line touches in best case scenario for them. And then you have to hope that Tampa scores all of its points on the ground. But that's not something I'm going to do here.
Okay. There's another curiosity question for you.
All right. Jake Ciely. Follow him on Twitter at AllInKid. Read him on theathletic.com. How about next week we get together and we try to come up with like a top 30 rankings for 2021 fantasy football?
That's certainly easy for me because my way too early rankings come out on Monday.
There we go. And then I can start cobbling mine together and we'll be good to go on this front.
That'll be the other way. You can yell at me about my rankings instead of me yelling about yours.
That would be nice. Yeah, that's a situation. Maybe that's what we'll do for next year. You just give your rankings, then I'll be like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. Move that guy up.
This guy comes in here and just criticizes Pat's rankings. That's the
point of the show.
The show, you jabronis.
Yeah. We also hate each other in real life. So that anger that you see on the show is just it translates off camera too. Anyway,
I've been to Toronto, and I've been to Pat's, your old place.
My old place, that's true. I don't live there anymore.
Yeah.
I upgraded. Although my old place was really nice, but I was renting it. I didn't own it. So, I couldn't stay there. Couldn't afford it. It was too nice for me. Too rich for my blood. Anyway, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, UFC picks, golf picks, football picks. It's all up there right now. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Smash the like button to this episode and sub to Mayo Media Network and check out all of the awesome UFC content that we got coming up for the Conor McGregor fight. All right, good luck this week. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!